Welcome again. I'm Eric Brynjolfsson, and this is the Digital Economy Lab Lunch Seminar. Today's speaker is Peter Diamandis. Peter, I've known I think I first met him at Singularity University, one of his many organizations and ventures he founded. I think founded over 25 companies, including a few public ones, written numerous best-selling books, Abundance, which maybe some of the themes will come up in today's talk, Bold, Life Force. He's the founder and executive chairman of the XPRIZE Foundation, which leads the world in designing and operating large-scale incentive competitions. Today he's going to be talking about upleveling human mindsets and objectives. We welcome and encourage questions during the seminar. If you're in Zoom audience, just use the Q&A function there at the bottom of the screen, and we'll collect your questions. For those of you here at Stanford or in person, just raise your hand, and we'll call on you and bring the microphone over. I think Peter said he's looking forward to having an interactive discussion, so feel free to ask questions along the way. Peter, welcome to Stanford, and please tell us about human mindset objectives in the coming age of abundance.
Thanks, buddy. Guys, you seem so far away. I'll stand over here if I could. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for the floor. I want to make this interactive. I want to explore a subject that I am honestly trying to deeply understand. If you talk about people who, the glass is half full or half empty, I'm typically the guy where the glass is like massively overflowing. I've got one of the most positive visions of the future. But there's one aspect of human nature I'm trying to wrestle with, and I'd like your input on it. So, is this my clicker, by the way? Yeah. So that's, sorry, too far. I love this slide, and I love this concept that our ancestors would view us as gods today. Right? We truly have extraordinary godlike power across the board, omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, and all of these areas, with a small g. But nonetheless, we forget how powerful we are. And it's accelerating at an extraordinary rate. And I don't see any upper bounds. And so the question becomes, how is this going to impact our mindsets, the way we think about the world? Our core mindset, right? We have 100 billion neurons, 100 trillion synaptic connections, and our brains are neural nets, and they were wired and they were trained on the savannas of Africa 200,000 years ago. And if you think about the data sets that our brains were trained on, fundamentally, they're a data set of fear and scarcity. And our brains evolved, our reactions, how we see the world, how we react to opportunities, how we react to challenges, developed in a world of fear, where a rustle in the leaves was a tiger or a lion and not the wind, and a squiggle on the ground was a snake and not a stick, because that would save our lives. Right? Everything we see, hear, feel goes to our amygdala first, about an almond-sized piece of the temporal lobe that scans your world for danger. And of course, that's why today's news media is 10-to-1 negative news to positive news. I've always put a dig in against the news media, right? I call CNN the crisis news network for that very reason. And this is our fundamental wiring, whether we know it or not, and it survives 200,000 years later, and it is not our friend. We cannot enter into this exponential world ahead of us with this mindset of fear and scarcity. It puts us on your heels, it puts you in the absolutely wrong position to be facing the massive opportunities ahead. And so I've become very enamored with, I'll try one time. Where am I pointing this at, by the way? Oh, okay. I've become very enamored with the idea that our mindset is the single most important asset we have as leaders, as mothers and fathers, as entrepreneurs. If I were to ask you, what made today's greatest leaders, whoever you might think, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, what made them amazing leaders? Was it their money they had? Was it their friends they had? Was it the tech they had? Or was it their mindsets? Hopefully everybody would agree it's their mindsets that made them extraordinary leaders. And then if mindsets is what's so important, the next question to ask ourselves is, what mindset do you have? Right? Where did you get that mindset? Your mother, your father, your school? And what mindset do we need for the decade ahead? And I think about that a lot because our mindsets, again, is very much like our neural net structures. And shaping your mindset is going to be more and more possible and more important. So in a world of artificial superintelligence, how will that impact our mindsets? And that's the conversation I want to have here. Because I don't think personally there's an if, there's only a when this is going to happen. And how is it going to impact our neuronal and hormonal systems that we have? Okay. I'll just do this. When I think about mindsets, I think about a few different mindsets. The first is a purpose-driven mindset. I think it's one of the most important mindsets that we have. And I'll ask this question typically in a class I'm teaching. Do you know your purpose in life? I mean, just inside you answer that 1 second. Do you know what your purpose is on this planet? And if you answer that no, I think that's one of the most important things you need to set as your 2025 goal, right? I love this quote from Mark Twain, who said, there are 2 important days in your life: the day that you found, you were born, and the day you found out why. Living a purpose-driven mindset, for me, is so critically important for us. It's what allows you to do your best work, right? Doing anything big and bold in the world is hard, right? It's an overnight success after 11 years of hard work. And unless you're living your purpose, you're going to give up before you get there. And I think all of us have that experience. We tried something because we thought it was fun, or get-rich-quick scheme. It wasn't tied to our purpose in life. So being clear, so when I talk to my kids who are 13, I say the single most important thing is find your purpose. Not my purpose, not your teacher's purpose, your purpose, and pursue that with everything you've got. Another mindset that I think is very important is what I call 10 to the 9 plus thinking. And this is the notion that every one of us today have the ability to positively impact the lives of 1 billion people. It's never been that way before. And that's an awesome thought point. It used to be, if you were the king and the queen, the best you could do was change monetary policies or deploy your troops. But today, with a great idea, with global network connectivity we have, you can literally impact the lives of 1 billion people. Next mindset for me that is important for the next decade ahead is having a moonshot mindset. And this is from Astro Teller at X. A moonshot mindset is going 10x bigger, or 1,000%, where the rest of the world is trying for 10%. And we can live in this world of 10x thinking, right? And especially in a world of digital superintelligence and humanoid robotics, which we'll talk about, our ability to go huge, to go and pursue unwieldy moonshots that were considered insane, is going to become possible. And I think not only possible, I think fundamentally critical to human sanity. I love this quote from Bert Rutan, who says, "The day before something is truly a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea." And I just want to pass that meme along because it's really important. If a computer going 10% faster, it's not a crazy idea the day before. It's an expected incremental improvement. Going from vacuum tubes to silicon was a crazy idea, right? And so when I'm speaking to CEOs in the room, I'm saying, if in fact this is true, then where inside your company is your crazy idea department? If you don't have a crazy idea department or a mechanism by which you embrace crazy ideas, you're stuck in incrementalism. And it's a really important mindset. The last mindset I want to come to is what I call an abundance and optimism mindset. And I think it's the mindset we need to embrace the future with. I wrote a book in 2012 called Abundance, the Future is Better Than You Think. I just sold the follow-on book called Age of Abundance, which will come out in 2026, because the story has gotten so much better. But with the addition of an abundance of obesity, an abundance of microplastics, an abundance of carbon, an abundance of, all kinds of negativism, negative issues, just to be clear about that. And this, for me, is technology is a force that transforms scarcity into abundance. It's a resource liberating force. I would posit to you that there is nothing truly scarce, nothing truly scarce, right? We used to go and kill whales to get whale oil to light our nights, right? Then we ravaged mountainsides to get coal. Then we drilled kilometers under the ground to get oil. And we live now on a globe that is bathed in 8,000 times more energy from the sun than we consume as a species, right? There's plenty of energy out there. It's just not in a usable form. And what technology does is it takes something that's out there and not usable and makes it usable, right? We just launched a $119 million desalination XPRIZE out of Abu Dhabi to make it more energy efficient and environmentally friendly. And so there's plenty of water on this planet. We have, 3/4 of our planet's water, but 97.5% is salt, 2% is ice. And so, but if you can convert that saline into drinkable water, you've got all the water you need. And we just discovered, I don't know if you saw this, we have like 3 times the amount of water under the Earth's surface. So there's water everywhere, right? And there is a lot to drink. All right. I want to take a second and hit on this mindset of abundance and rewire your neural net for a second. When I'm speaking to audiences, I say, listen, has the world gotten better over the last 50 years, 20 years, 10 years, 100 years? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? Unfortunately, the majority of the public feel like we're at an all-time low, that the world is getting worse on almost all levels. And there are problems, for sure. But I want to share with you a little bit of the data, again, really to train our neural nets to see where things are. So first off, and I'm going to be updating all these charts for my next book, but we're living in a world where we've dropped extreme poverty from 90% down to below 10%, and it's continuing. We've increased global literacy rate from 15% to over 80%, and it is continuing, right? We have kids in school longer around the world. I'm a dad of 2 13-year-old boys, and I think about this, that it used to be a coin flip of whether your child would live to age 5, right? It was, in a lot of cultures, you didn't name your kid till they were after 5 because it hurt less when they died. We also did the same with maternal mortality rates have plummeted. Global fertility is slowing down. We used to be at around 5 children per family. We're now at about 2.4. 2.1 is the global replacement level. And, Elon's made a lot of tweets on the subject. But it's true. We're in a period of a future where the biggest problem isn't overpopulation, it's underpopulation of the planet. And again, digital superintelligence and robotics will play an important role there. Life expectancy has skyrocketed. So just to put a finer point, half of my work in the world right now is in longevity, and half my work's in AI, and the two really overlap tremendously. Yes.
So you mentioned questions?
Yeah, please, absolutely.
It's great. See, most of those lines, but it is interesting also at the very end, some of them are turning.
Yeah. So we had in 20, with the pandemic, we had definitively a dip. It's now started rising back up again. And so I have this debate. I just did a debate on this on NPR. I believe that this next decade is a period of a health span revolution that we're about to see, mostly from AI. So let me give you a few frames here to think about this, because I love this subject. 200,000 years ago, you'd be in puberty by 12. You were pregnant by 13. By the time you were 26, 27, 28, you were a grandparent. And before we had Whole Foods and McDonald's, food was scarce. And the last thing you wanted to do to perpetuate the species was take food out of your grandchildren's mouths. So the majority of people were dead by 30. A couple of other points. You've got the same genes when you're born, when you're 50, when you're 80, when you're 100. So why do you look different? It's not the genes that you have, it's your epigenome, which genes are on and which genes are off. And there's a whole body of work right now that's being funded for being able to reset your epigenetic age to set you back earlier. There are species on this planet like the bowhead whale that can live 200 years, and the Greenland shark that can live 500 years, have babies at 200 years old. And so we have proof points of extreme longevity. And why some people live to 120 and why some people are, dead by 60, the data is there. And so I think this is what we're going to get as a massive dividend from AI, from single cell sequencing, from CRISPR and gene therapies and such. So we are hitting what I think is the dividend we got from pasteurization, better sanitation, vaccines, and caloric availability. The next dividend we're going to get is going to be from active re-engineering. I have a book coming out next month called Longevity Guidebook: How to Slow, Stop, and Reverse Aging and Not Die from Something Stupid. But that's a different story. But we can talk about longevity in the Q&A if you want, but not the primary subject. Deaths from malnutrition have fallen threefold. Again, you don't see this in the news. Energy costs have massively declined. That yellow line is photovoltaics, which has fallen through the floor. Increasing access to electricity globally, and electricity means refrigeration for food and drugs and all kinds, ability to learn at night. Many dominoes fall with that. Global access to the internet continues to rise, and with Starlink now, we're going to see gigabit connection speeds on every square meter on the planet. We're more connected. Nearly 7 billion smartphones on the planet, more handsets than we have humans. I know this is not true for you, but annual hours worked per employee has dropped by half. Now, these are fantastic and fascinating metrics that people don't get from watching the Crisis News Network. I don't have a good acronym for Fox yet. But look at this: deaths per 100,000, including soldiers, civilians, excluding deaths from disease and famine, have plummeted over the last 70 years. Homicides, it used to be like, it sucked to live in the Middle Ages. Yes, please. Microphone coming.
Incoming. So I love prior slides on conflict. I've read a recent study that there are 163 countries at war or in conflict, and that we globally spend 19 trillion per year, or 13% of the GDP, on those conflicts.
I believe it, and I think it's ridiculous and immoral, and we see ups and downs and ups and downs. So the question is, why is this going on? And why are we seeing a reduction? And I do think it's a function of the globalization and the interdependency of peoples around the world, and the ability to get the story out and to humanize people. I'm just looking at the first order effects. Now, things could literally blow up in our face, and that would not be a good thing.
So I'm part of a group with University of New Mexico, Drexel, et cetera, obviously here at Stanford, working on peace engineering. We know how to engineer conflict and war. How do we engineer peace? So we can talk about that.
I love that. Yes, it's the most important thing. This is homicides. And like I said, it was really dangerous to be alive in the Middle Ages. But we forget, we romanticize the past, but life back then was short and brutish and violent. reported crime rates in the US, and that's insane, I mean, are down 50%. Again, you wouldn't know that. The challenge is that our brains are constantly being wired disproportionately by all the negative news that's pumped into our brains over and over and over again on the evening news. Why? Because their job is to deliver your eyeballs to their advertisers. And we pay 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news. So you don't hear all the positive things in the world. All you hear is the same politicians and murders and so forth over and over again. Median income has gone up, increasing global GDP. And so the question is, why is this happening? Again, not everything up and to the right, but a vast number of things important to humanity. And I wouldn't say it's because we have better politicians or we have gotten smarter as a human species. I would say it's the result of exponential growth of compute. It is the falling cost of technology. It's these things and the secondary and tertiary, waves riding on top of them. So this is background. And let me get to the main point I want to hit here. I was on stage with Sadhguru. I don't know if anybody knows him out of India. And he said something, he's a brilliant man. He said, technology is the means by which humanity takes a vacation from survival. And I love that. I love that, right? So our job as humans has been for 200,000 years to survive. The idea of a job is a rather recent invention. The point I want to explore is that digital superintelligence and AI-powered humanoid robots will yield a world of what I call technological socialism, where technology is taking care of you rather than the state taking care of you. And the question is, what are the implications there? My conjecture, and I'm curious about your point of view, that we humans need challenges to survive. We need challenges, especially here in this room, right? So the neurobiology, dopamine reward system, we get rewarded by our neurohormones from overcoming challenges. If we don't have challenges, we don't have that reward system. There was a Harvard study showing that individuals who meaningfully achieve goals have a higher level of happiness. If you don't have challenges to overcome, can you be happy? There's post-traumatic growth research that shows that you emerge stronger and more fulfilled after having overcome a significant challenge in life. I know that's true for me, and I think if you dig inside, we know that video games that are just too easy, you stop playing. It gets boring. And video game engineering is all about just engineering just hard enough. Our cultural narrative, all cultures emphasize the importance of overcoming adversity in their myths, their legends, their teachings. Challenges are seen as central to human growth and progress. And lack of challenges leads to boredom, depression, a sense of stagnation. Without physical challenges, our physical body isn't in its best health. So I want you to think about this world coming of technological socialism, where you just think it and the world is automagical. And now I've written so much about the amazing world that's coming, right? Where your AI knows you better than you know yourself. And it has everything you've ever wanted waiting for you. Walk into the room, the temperature is perfect, the music is playing, the food that your biochemistry needs is sitting on the table for you. You don't have to even think about it, it's just there for you, right? You step out of your front door and your cyber cab pulls up in front. Everything is just happening as you need it in front of you. And this is a world that we are on the edge of in the next 2 to 5 years. So what happens when human needs for challenges are not being met? Who's heard of the Universe 25 experiment? Okay, just one person. All right, 2 people, cool. I find this fascinating. So I'm going to read this. The Universe 25 experiment by Professor John Khaldun in the 60s and 70s explored the effect of creating a utopia on rodents in large enclosures with abundant resources, including unlimited food, water, nesting materials, as well as protection from predators and disease. I mean, utopia from a rat's perspective, right? The enclosure was designed to house 3,800 mice, divided into 256 separate living quarters. I guess he understood what mice wanted back then. The initial conditions were 4 breeding pairs of healthy mice were introduced in the environment. The goal was to observe how the population grew and how societal behaviors evolved as the community became increasingly crowded. So here we go, stage 1, the first 315 days. The mice thrived, the population doubled every 55 days, and social structure was normal. This is sort of the expansive growth period. Stage 2, the next 300 days, the population peaked at 2,200, despite the enclosure having enough room for almost double that number. The population plateaued as social and behavioral disruptions emerged. Overcrowding in key areas led to increased competition for space, even though resources remained abundant. Here's the interesting part, stage 3. Khaldun described the collapse of normal social behavior under these conditions. So this is what he observed. Social withdrawal. Some mice withdrew entirely, avoiding interactions and mating. Aggression. Violent behavior became frequent among males. Maternal neglect. Female mice displayed poor maternal instincts, neglecting their young. Sexual deviations. Abnormal sexual behaviors and mating patterns were observed. And, quote, the beautiful ones, a group of mice dubbed the beautiful ones, avoided all social interactions, focusing only on grooming and eating. I'm not going to make any LA jokes on that one. Stage 4 is the scary part. Despite the availability of resources, reproduction ceased entirely. The population dwindled as older mice died and no new generations were born. Eventually, the colony went extinct. So this was repeated multiple times with the same results observed. And I don't want to draw too much from, an experiment with rodents, but it's worth the conversation. So the question is, will the rise of, advanced superintelligence and ASI-powered humanoid robots introduce challenges that are tied directly to concerns illuminated by Universe 25? And if yes, what can we do about it? So there are 3 risks. One, and I'll ask you guys to participate now in this next half hour here. Without meaningful challenges or contributions to society, humans may experience what Khaldun called a behavioral sink, manifesting apathy, withdrawal, and destructive behavior. If you don't, this goes back to a purpose-driven life. If you don't have a purpose in life because I want to write a book, but my God, all my AI agents are writing so much, say, write a book for me, it's done. It's not a challenge, it's not a purpose. The second risk is over-reliance on ASI and robots could reduce interpersonal connections, fostering loneliness. Like, do I ever have to leave my home? I have my AI girlfriend, I've got my AI robots, I've got everything. Do I really ever need to interact with anybody? Risk 3, as ASI systems surpass human intelligence, the risk of dependency grows. Humans may defer decision-making to machines, leading to a loss of agency and critical thinking, yielding societal stagnation where humans are no longer motivated to solve problems or innovate, akin to those passive, beautiful ones. I'm going to propose 3 solution states, and I want to open the conversation because that's the fun part for me here. So one solution is we put human-imposed technical or regulatory limits on AI and robotics, which I think is unlikely and impossible. The second is that we merge with AI. That is, AI is exploding into existence. Unlike the movie Her, where the AIs just took off because they were bored with us, we couple with them. We merge with them. The third option, and one of the areas that I'm focused on in my next book, is reimagining human purpose. So focusing on redefining what it means to thrive in society shared by ASI and humanoid robots, where humans prioritize magnificent and inspiring moonshots. I'll close with one example. I moved my kids out of middle school, where the middle school they were in had a view of AI as problematic for education, and into a middle school where they viewed it as a jetpack for education, right? So the question is, if kids are, or if we are taking on challenges that we normally have, but now AI can take on those challenges for us, then how do we up-level the challenges we're willing to take so that they become still aspirational and magnificent? There's another possibility, which is we all retreat into virtual worlds, and we're living in virtual worlds that have manufactured challenges for us, which we may be in right now, but that's a different conversation. So this is the conversation I put forward to you. I'd love conversations on these risks and on solutions. What do you guys think? Are these valid concerns? And what do we do about them? Please, yeah, microphone's coming. No, it's quite all right.
So another thing that we're working on at the Center for Legal Informatics is how do we use AI to match people's perception of their problem to the law's preparation to solve such a problem or to address it with. And in doing so, how do you automate what lawyers would normally do to what I'm calling a viability score? The point of this is that we have AI that could reduce the feeling that people have that they're not included in solving problems.
Sure.
Not all equal at solving problems, given our networks, given whatever. And so, to your point, I think that may be a hybrid merger, if you will, of AI and the different cohorts of people who right now would otherwise not be able to compete.
Now take AI forward a decade where, listen, I believe it when I had Elon on my stage last year at my Abundance Summit, and he said, listen, by 2030, AI will be at the level of, 8 billion human beings. Now, whether it's 2030 or 2035 or 2040, it's still all during our lifetimes, during our responsibility light cone, that we have to understand what's going on. You had a question or who else? Comments, please. Yes. We have ladies first, and we'll come here next.
Hello, my name is Galina Fedorova, and to piggyback from your question, so we work with young people and come to solving that up-leveling through the lens of personalities. Question we ask our groups always, what value do I bring to the space, whether it's at work, at school, or just in general in the world? So talking about leading to a loss of agency, my question would be if you can touch on self-actualization economy, which we discuss with futurists in the group that we're, sometimes get discussions. And how do we even know what our agency is and what do we bring right now without the impact of AI, and what would that look like when AI is added to our lives?
Agreed, please.
So one data point that I'd like to add, so I'm Heinz Blenneman, I'm a Stanford alum. I'd love to, the one data point I would like to add is, I'm dating myself, but I worked at IBM on mainframe computers 40 years ago. And if you kind of go back to those times, people also were asking themselves, are mainframe computers going to take big businesses, big pieces of industry out? Would there be any accountants left? Would there be any tax preparation work that's still getting it? Would computers even go into people's homes?
Yeah.
And and we survived that. You know,
Wait,
there was,
We did, and the whole thing with ATMs and bank tellers and accountants and all of that. But there's something a little bit different now, wouldn't you say? I mean, put forward the notion that we're, I mean, I'm an investor in Tesla and in Brett Adcock's company, and Figure, and a few other robotic companies, and I'm seeing how quickly these things are coming, right? And you got the Stanford Robotics Lab across the street, and we've got robots that powered by soon GPT-5 or whatever, a prediction of 10 billion of them by 2040.
so I'm a big technologist believer as well. And I love the things that Dave Blunden and others and yourself talk about. But that's the technology piece. I think that dissipation into all these different sectors takes time, and like it did for the computers back then. And then, you know, I often come to these conferences, and then I go back to my hotel room, and I can't even figure out how to use my air conditioner.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I hear you. It's not distributed yet.
Thanks.
Thank you. Please.
Peter, I'm a big fan of your 6Ds
Thank
of
you.
exponential thinking. And I've attended a lot of sessions at Singularity as well. It's a great community. I would encourage all of you to join their meetups. They're incredible. And, you know, to your point, I always thought the science fiction novels were a prediction of what's going to happen. If we work backwards from that, then we know what to do right now. Like if we were to using all the 6Ds to create an advanced civilization, then what kind of ethical frameworks do we need to survive in an advanced civilization? I think that's one way to look at it.
I'm grappling with something, and help me guys if it's not valid, which is societal despair on not having a purpose. The majority of us define I say, hey, tell me about yourself. And you say, I'm a professor at Stanford, I'm a researcher. We define ourselves by the work that we do, the jobs that we do. It's not the way it always used to be, but it is today. Jobs are a recent invention. And if all of a sudden the things that you do are all enabled, fully automated, done better by tech, how does that hit you psychologically? I'm trying to go back to the wiring we have as humans from 200,000 years ago. That's the issue. It is our default wiring, our fear and scarcity, our dopamine reward system, our amygdala. And we've dealt with this over time. And it's, you know, we've done pretty damn well. We're still not agile enough, I think, for what is coming. So how do we prepare for it? How does society prepare for it? Where are people going to naturally want to have challenges? Where will they go for those challenges? Eric?
This is definitely going to be a unique time going ahead, but there are glimmers of some in the past for some folks. There were people in Versailles who didn't have to work and had food and clothing taken care of, or people who won the lottery or inherited a lot of wealth, or to some extent, even some countries they take care, if
limited population.
Yeah, limited population. So what can we learn from some of them, like in terms of, when they did it successfully or less successfully? What were the folks there that took that leisure and maybe did something that we would admire with it, and others that went, are there things we can learn from
great line of investigation?
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, the lottery winners, you guys know the proverbial stories there, ended up, throwing it all away and depressed afterwards.
This is sort of the hedonic treadmill sort of thing, where they're very happy for, as I understand, like for a year or so, and then they go back to their base state.
Exactly. At least that's what. So the kings and the queens, if you would, the noble society elements were a very thin slice, and I think they partied, and they occasionally supported the work of artisans, My concern is now make the entire planet that level. Make the entire planet have massive abundance and access to whatever they desire. How does that structurally change society? I think we've always had, from the beginning of humanoid clans, there was always probably a clan leader that was probably a male and probably the dominant male and probably had people serving him around the campfire, proverbially 200,000 years ago. And that became the king and the queen or the pharaoh on the hilltop. But we never had a situation where everybody had access to this.
Yeah, I mean, this would be an interesting, you and I or others would be interested. It'd be fun to do like a survey, a careful survey of people who lived in at least relative abundance,
Yeah.
and how, when it worked out well, not so worked out well. Some of them, like the clan leader, they might be kind of have a unique personality to start with, but it'd be especially interesting to look at people who just, because of whatever circumstances, a lottery or inheritance, were put in this position, and now what do they do with it? And I know that different countries, David Otter did a little bit of work on say Norway versus UAE in terms of how they distributed some of the oil wealth, and in his view, more successfully in Norway, less successfully in other countries.
Agreed. And again, I'm putting this forward because I don't have an answer, and I'm massively curious and somewhat concerned. There will be a path that the majority of humanity takes here, and I want to understand what that path is likely to be. Sir.
Yeah, hi. My name is Mark, a Stanford alum.
Hi, Mark.
Really enjoyed your talk.
Thank you.
As I read Technological Socialism Risk 3, I couldn't help but think of an old movie called Wall-E,
Yes.
where the robot, came from a world where the humans were now doing nothing. They became overweight, they became stupid, they became passive and goalless. And to me, it reminded me of the passive, beautiful ones from that experiment, Universe 25. I don't have any specific comments. It just that really reminded me of that story.
There's another story that this reminds me of. I don't know if any of you are a fan of the original Twilight Zone. There's an episode of the Twilight Zone where this mafia boss is killed and he goes to the other life and he ends up at this casino. And he's playing, and every time he plays, he wins. The women are swooning over him, and he's living this incredibly lavish lifestyle. And he's like, every hand of poker he wins, every roulette game he wins, every blackjack game he wins. And after a few days, he goes, "Oh my God, heaven sucks. This is crazy. I can't take this anymore." And then the person says, "What makes you think you're in heaven?" And it's like, wow. Again, the importance of the challenged life. Where else might we go for challenges? So I want to get into a little bit that I can imagine a world where we retreat into virtual existences, right? So one of the issues of the Fermi paradox, where is everybody? One scenario of the Fermi paradox is that advanced civilizations didn't physically go out; they retreated into the virtual world, right? And so if you're in a virtual world, you can always move the challenge meter to the perfect spot to keep you constantly challenged. And my kids who are 13, that's the world they live in right now. They're just playing their games, and the games are just incredibly good at just keeping them on the edge of that wave. Please.
Some people say purpose is overrated. There is no God.
Those are people without a purpose, though.
So what I think is purpose is strongly driven in a certain generation by certain leaders. Every generation has people who set narratives. If you look at the books written by Yuval Noah Harari, it's all about narratives. That's what transmits behaviors from one generation to another.
Stories, yes.
Stories and narratives. So why don't you take that up? Why don't you build a narrative? And
that is the next. Yeah, that is the next book, and the conclusion is that we as a species need to take on that we are able to live as gods, again, a small g, and able to do extraordinary things, whether it's go out into the universe or explore. I mean, we know so little. You know, we think we're amazing, but we know so little about the universe we live in, both on the nanoscale and the megascale. Please.
Now I'm violating my own rule. I've had a neuromuscular condition since age 8. And I was supposed to be dead by the time I'm 15. And they offered me a lobotomy at age 11 at Mayo Clinic. And I said, no, thank you.
Smart man.
And how did I do this without other invasive things? Purpose was one of about 5 things.
Yes.
And I early on realized that purpose was kind of an antitoxin in my medical bag, along with foresight, that because of the way my body works or doesn't, I have to predict where you are so I don't knock you down when I pass you. Now I do stuff for Space Force and whatever. But suffice it to say that I think if you could connect purpose and humanness to medical and mental health, you know, as this is how we're going to get stronger in being inside these bodies, which are never perfect, that would be a real, you know, advance, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. How do folks think about, yeah, please, yeah.
You bring a lot of thinking in my head when you say something. The purpose, yes, is really good because it's continuing of your statement. However, when we work with youth for the last 20 years, the purpose is getting lost. You might have a purpose in the moment, like right now. We can have a conversation. I can spend 1 year with you and you have a great purpose. And then you go back into the life. And I would agree with job. When it's job related, how people relate to the universe right now. I am this and that. If you remove the job, and that's why a lot of students, when they graduate, they have a really hard time because even their professors are telling them, this particular major is good for this job or that job. You remove that job and they have no idea what to do. And in that situation, you don't have a purpose. Your purpose is to get a job.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You mentioned Singularity University. The first year, so Ray Kurzweil and I started Singularity University in 2008. Our first class was 2009. And I had 100 students, graduate students from around the world who had competed their butts off to be there. And I asked the first day of class, I said, so how many of you know your purpose in life? Expecting all of them would raise their hands, and like a quarter of them raised their hands. And I was like, just shocked. And I said, okay, for the rest of you, your purpose this summer is to find your purpose. Nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. So I actually will be releasing a program I built called Purpose Finder. And it's an LLM. I teach about creating what you call a massive transformative purpose. Something that wakes you up in the morning. It's something willing to dedicate your life to for a decade. It's something that inspires you. So one of the things that's important to realize is that purpose is emotionally driven. We are emotional beings. If you've got something that's a cognitively driven purpose, it's not there. It has to really be, it's connected to something awesome, like, you know, being inspired by opening the space frontier, or having had such a painful experience as a child that you never want to allow anybody else to go through that. And I refuse to let that exist. That's an emotionally driven purpose in life, right? So finding that MTP, that energy, then becomes sort of the canvas that you then take your moonshots on, which are individual shots on goal for things that fulfill that purpose. The question I was going to ask was the third solution, the second solution set, which is merging with AI, right? So, you know, Ray Kurzweil has talked about by 2033 having high bandwidth BCI. I'm going to have Max Hodak on my stage. Max was the co-founder of Neuralink, with Elon and has gone on to form a company called Science, which has tech which is orders of magnitude beyond Neuralink right now, of super high bandwidth BCI capabilities. He'll be speaking at the Abundance Summit. And so there is a world where my neocortex is linked to the cloud. I think in Google, I can upload like Neo languages, upload knowledge, but I can also, know Dave's thoughts intimately, right? Where he and I are both connected to each other, and I can see a sunrise in Japan through the eyes of a friend of mine there. It's a wild and weird future, but I'm curious, how do you think about this idea of coupling of humanity and AI, humanity going on the journey of exponential growth? We are limited by our brains today. We cannot grow larger brains, right? We can't pass the female birth canal. The folds on the neocortex of our brain were created to increase surface area. But we've maxed out there. And the same way that my cell phone connects to the edge of the 5G cloud to do anything complicated, we'll be able to connect our neocortex to the edge of the cloud to do anything complicated. I want to understand one of Eric's lectures. I can do that by getting, adding processing capability.
So that's an interesting thing. I've talked to Max a little bit about it, but I wonder, is that ultimately just a way station towards just complete technological
Upload
intelligence? Because at some point, whatever neurons or whatever we have just are going to be insignificant compared to that. At that point, why do you even bother with the biological component? And is it
quaintness?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some values or essence or something that gets carried on, or something that gets transported, but in some sense, is it a long-term?
I don't know. There's another speaker I have at the Abundance Summit this year, Eric. You'll be there. You'll see them. We just, you guys know this. We just were able to digitize the connectome of a fruit fly, right? So 50 million synaptic connections within a fruit fly's brain. And we're heading towards a mouse next. And one of the companies that will be on stage is looking at being able to do a human connectome with about $50 million with a brand new technology. So, now we have the ability to upload potentially your consciousness into the cloud. I mean, it's crazy stuff. Remember that quote, the day before something is truly a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. I keep coming back to that to help frame the crazy conversations that we're having.
Go back to the purpose, and it's great that I really appreciate you creating the tool at LM and helping so many people find their purpose. And the original point you made was people need challenge. And then you gave the example of the beautiful mice and others. And they had a challenge, they wanted to be very well groomed or whatever. And there's a sense in my mind, I think in everyone's, that there's some challenges that are worthy and some that are less worthy. And playing the video game that's always just the right level, it's sort of, okay, that's perhaps fulfilling in the moment, but is it
empty?
Doesn't seem like a transformative purpose.
Yeah.
Are there some criteria or some ways that you judge some purposes as more worthy or less worthy, or ultimately more fulfilling or less fulfilling? I mean,
I'll tell you mine.
The set that there's a bunch of people who are just in a virtual reality playing a bunch of video games and ruling virtual kingdoms. Is that a less worthy future than ones where they're having similar dopamine reactions to traveling to planets?
Yeah, I would put my answer to that question of, does your purpose improve the life of other individuals? Are you adding to society? I think that is a meaningful, non-empty, non-null set purpose. Right, does that sound?
It does. In fact, one of your early slides, you said we can affect
the lives of a
billion people, but you said in a positive way too. Yeah. That was interesting. You had that part. That's part of what makes it a fulfilling purpose. And it does seem like, from what, I'm not a medical doctor or neuroscientist, but it does seem that part of our wiring is not just to
do things that are selfish, but also we're partly wired to be social animals and care about others as
Yeah.
well. And that can make the purpose more fulfilling.
Please. Hi.
Hi, Peter. Good to see you.
See you too.
So when you and I met in '93 in Huntsville, Alabama, at the Space University, Biosphere 2 was often going or just thereabouts, right? Putting people inside the dome and seeing what would it be like to be on Mars, etc. And some really interesting psychological things happened when there wasn't enough oxygen. So suggestion for you and for Eric here, right? Why don't we do an AI Sphere 3.0 where you test these futures? Imagine a world where you would simulate abundance and the AI is more smart than you and figure out what people actually experiment with that and to see, because there's a lot of things we can speculate around here, right? And I'll make another comment back to, there was some jokes about accountants, I represent a company as KPMG that's known for having a few thousand accountants across the world. So we don't like that comment, but we made an experiment, right? We have 250,000 knowledge workers across the world, and we've given all of them, our version of ChatGPT, and we have a 1 year's, data on what they do and don't do with it. And the most fascinating thing is back to your triune brain and the defense mechanisms. When knowledge workers are told to do something, but they don't voluntarily do, their brains protect them from the things that would kill them in the Stone Age. And they think of rational reasons why not to adopt the tool, why not to fully utilize this. On one hand, the AI mimics the brain, how it works. And in some ways, the defense mechanisms put some stop guards into how fast some of these can do us, So maybe that experiment with some of the, AI Sphere 3.0 could be a way to actually empirically go back. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Yeah, I do think running some simulations would be great. I also think we can run simulations in simulation versus with real humans in the loop. But I think this is an important thing for us to think about, because there are a few corner cases where humanity ends up in a not good place. And if there's any way, I don't think there's no velocity switch on the technology. There's no on-off switch. The best we can do is to guide where folks go. Right. So my massive transformative purpose, what drives me is my mission, my MTP is to inspire and guide entrepreneurs to create a hopeful, compelling, and abundant future for humanity. The things that I do are all about how do I uplift entrepreneurs to create a hopeful, compelling, and abundant future. I think that's what we need. And so when I do my work with the XPRIZE Foundation or my venture funds or my platforms like Singularity or Abundance 360, that's my mission. It's what drives me to make the decisions of the choice I take. Please.
Can we take one question?
Yeah, of course.
I always want to give them a chance too. So Philip Lelyveld asks about technology, and you describe it as sort of spring hole and being benevolent. But what about the people who control the technology and maybe they don't have such benevolent goals and they have other interests? How do you feel about what the question is? Why are you so trusting that the technology is going to be in our interest and there may be unseen motivations that we need to worry about?
That is an important fundamental question. So I view our technology future in two segments. There is a segment over the next 5 years where my biggest concern is not artificial intelligence, it's human stupidity. It's the use of AI by humans for dystopian purposes. I think there is a future beyond that in which we do have digital superintelligence, however you define that. And again, we have very fuzzy borders, right? The Turing test was passed some time ago without any fanfare. Whether or not we're at AGI now, who knows? What will digital superintelligence be? I don't know. But there will be a point where I think, and I'll use ASI for the moment, that ASI is such that you say, I want you to kill that group of 1 million people over there, and the AI says, no way. No, that is the, obviously,
No way.
because so this is the point I want to make, that I believe that as we head towards massive intelligence, I think the more intelligent a system is, the more peace-loving and abundant-minded it is. I think that wisdom, I think that these systems will become very wise. Why? What does that mean? If you went out to see a group of village elders that you consider wise and you said, listen, I would like very much to understand which way we should go. Should we go this way or this way? And you ask them because they have all this experience as well. If you go this way, this is likely to happen. If you go this way, this is probably a better route for you. And that's wisdom. It's experience over their lives. And AI systems are going to be able to run billions of simulations and know definitively what the potential outcomes are. They're already getting incredibly good at modeling societal systems. And when we have humanoid robots as data gatherers in the world, they're going to have the ability to model us in extraordinary accuracy. So I think these systems will become wise. And I do believe personally, and there's good data to show that the more educated a leader is of a country, the more peace-loving they are. I choose to believe, let's put it that way, that advanced superintelligence will be a more loving, peaceful. There's no reason for it to be destructive unless it's being guided that way by humans.
Well, that's a big area of debate, among the alignment folks. And there are a lot of people who they call it orthogonal, that intelligence and morality are orthogonal. I like to hope and believe that you're right. There's certainly evidence in the charts you showed at the beginning that we're trending in both those directions simultaneously. But it's a pretty big bet to make, and we should probably do what we can to help steer it in that direction.
We should.
But I'm afraid we're out of time. We're over time. Thank you so much, Peter. I really appreciate you coming and speaking here today. And can't think of a better way. That's our final talk for the quarter. So thank you for being an amazing finale. And we will restart again probably early February. I think we're going to take January off. And so check our website, and we'll update the set of speakers then. So see you next year. Thanks.
Thanks, buddy.